This is CUNY TV, the television station of the greatest urban university in the world.
As the sun sets at the end of a New York workday, the mind transitions from daily tasks to the cloudier, more philosophical regions of social issues, culture, and politics. In a democracy, every perspective on the world is important, and people in art and culture have surprising bodies of knowledge that can shed fresh light on today's reality. The following conversation with Heidi Ewing took place in High Falls, New York on August 28, 2020.
Heidi Ewing is a film director, writer, and producer. Her 2006 documentary, Jesus Camp, was nominated for an Academy Award. Subsequent films, such as Ditropia, I Carry You With Me, and the TV miniseries Love Fraud, followed the lives of people determined to control their own destinies.
I realized later how much film had meant in my life, only after the fact. Because I went to the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown. I was studying to be in the State Department or a diplomat, which I would have been a horrible diplomat. I literally say everything I'm thinking. And so no, I did not plan on being a filmmaker. The curiosity about the world is what led me to documentary filmmaking.
Doing something like documentary filmmaking, we could address almost any subject, right?
You have absolute license to knock on anybody's door and ask any question you want. It's like this insane pass. As long as you ask a question with sincerity, as long as you actually want to know the answer, people will tell you anything.
To that point, how do you infiltrate something like, Jesus Camp? Like, how do you get the subjects to trust you? And then once you're in, how do you not sort of break your neutrality?
Well, actually, to be honest, there's a couple of scenes in the film. We had two cinematographers and myself at one point got physically sick. There was a couple of scenes that were just too overwhelming, especially the scene when the kids are sort of rallied together into this frenzy, basically, against abortion. And I felt that it was a bridge too far, and it was very late at night.
You wonder what they even understand about it. Some of those kids are 8 years old, right?
And that what they process is their mommy didn't want them. And like, it's so fragile. It was a couple of scenes like that, really. But overall, honestly, we got their trust because we walked in and said, Rachel said, I'm Jewish. And I said, I was raised a Catholic.
Rachel Grady.
My co-director, Rachel Grady. We said, but we want to know what's going on here because it's fascinating. And we want to really make sense of your worldview, and we really want to know. We didn't start it out as a political film. We really wanted to understand the choice to raise one's kids in this fashion. And this is like
it was a time
Bush.
of like people doing homeschooling and separating from mainstream society, right?
That's right. And it was just leading towards the apex. 2006. It was just like, that moment when Bush had really started to garner the support of the Christian right. It wasn't just like a known thing.
Right.
In fact, we were racing to finish the film because we thought it would be so dated. We thought this Christian right thing wouldn't last. That's how
how crazy is it? Because, my next question would be is where are they now? I mean, this is already 14 years ago. Those kids are sort of old enough to vote now. They are the army that Becky Fisher and the Christian ministries that they were building at that time to infiltrate politics with this particular Christian point of view.
The main characters all stuck with it. Became missionaries, went to Christian colleges, married young. I don't know their politics. I can assume their politics. They were very, very kind kids. We sort of like loosely kept in touch.
I want to ask you about where you're from, Detroit. You made a film called Ditropia, which was about the moment when Detroit was sort of turning from that kind of disintegrating American city into a kind of renaissance of creativity. Having grown up in Detroit and seeing how that city went through all these things, are you looking at what's happening in Portland, for example, or other places and seeing signs of things you understand and have some sort of idea about where this might go in these places? It's a different circumstance, of course, now with...
part of Ditropia is looking at a place that refused to diversify its economy and what the effects were. Like places like Cleveland who, brought in, the medical world and allowed themselves to diversify, did better. And Detroit was very stubborn about that. I mean, that's not your question. But that's part of the sort of...
But that is sort of what's happening right now, is like we've blocked out so many people and now we're now they're demanding to be let in.
That's right. And that disenfranchisement is a conversation that everyone's always having in Detroit. I feel like they did start having that, the famed, riots in the 60s. This is not a new conversation. The city was basically built to separate black and white people, literally by the highway. It's very hard to still get around Detroit. It's completely segregated. And that was done in a lot of cities. And so just the geography in and of itself, it smacks with racism.
Yeah.
And I think Detroit's been having the conversation longer. I think a lot of people are surprised to see what's happening in places like Seattle and Portland.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't aware that there was, any part
Black
of the
people living in those cities?
That's right. They didn't even, in Detroit, it was it's like a known, famous, port of call where people understand there's a major racial dynamic.
Yeah.
So yes, I have thought of Detroit many, many times while watching what's unfolding. And there's this the last line in the film is the tavern owner Tommy Stevens makes this incredible, beautiful monologue. Basically, at the end, he says, "It's coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming to you."
Yeah. In some ways, I feel like moving the conversation, not to take the spotlight away from the Black Lives Matter movement, which I think is a really important thing right now, but I think in a way to just step back a little bit and see the larger conflict that's going on here is something that could really be useful right now in terms of political discourse.
I mean, it's just so hard to get to the real discourse because it's so visual and it's so sensational to watch these videos being taken on iPhones unfold. I mean, they're so shocking to see the violence that I think it's really, really going to be hard to get past that. I mean, just when, there's a conversation starts to evolve, you get Wisconsin. And we should be looking at Wisconsin. We should be understanding why that guy is paralyzed. Mm-hmm. So we have to go back to the beginning, and we keep having to have the same conversation, which is what's wrong between the police and the people. Mm-hmm. And you're right, we have to get to the wider conversation, and it's going to be hard to get there because there's so many fireworks to look at. There's so many places to look.
It takes me to the next question. We can talk about your new film, I Carry You With Me, this film about two gay men from Mexico. But I want to ask you particularly about empathy, because I think that sort of an undervalued resource right now, something we seem to have forgotten how to use, is empathy, in the sense that you put yourself in the mindset of someone else, someone not like you, to try to understand them better. It's something we were taught as children, but I don't know how, as a director, you as an American woman who speaks English as your native language can make a film about two gay guys from Mexico. Why not? Why not? But I think that that's a real achievement to be able to film something in another language and also about a gender or sexuality, a story that's not even yours particularly. So many people right now are actually afraid to take on anything that's not exactly who they are.
That's right.
But I think that it's a great it's a big step, right?
Well, thank you. Yeah. So this conversation about who's allowed to represent others that aren't like yourself, that just sort of popped up. It's a conversation that's happening in documentary film as well, and at Sundance it was really interesting because most of the Latinx writers said the film feels Mexican, and it feels authentic, and that was the absolute most important thing that anyone said about the film, because of course it's a wild choice for a white woman from Detroit to make a gay film in Mexico in Spanish. But I had known these guys for 15 years and their story really touched me, and so I adapted their life and I wrote a movie. And it wasn't just empathy that one needs to do that. I needed the humility.
This is the first time you've actually scripted a drama.
And worked with actors.
Documentary films, including the new Love Fraud series you've done, often fill in with some kind of animation or something that can help you sort of understand sort of the story people are telling. But in this film, I didn't even realize until maybe 3/4 of the way through it that I was watching something that was a hybrid. It was a documentary, and also the actors playing them as younger.
I didn't really set out to do anything genre bending, but in the end I thought that was the best way to tell the story. And so that's why I think the film works on so many levels. I had an aesthetic and I had a vision, and then I asked for help.
I think it's a great film for being on the ground to see what what it's like to actually drive someone to cross the border and what their life is like afterwards.
I mean, there's been a lot of border crossing movies. I didn't spend too much time on the border because I think it's like almost, it's important to show it because you're invested in the character of Ivan. You can't skip Ivan's journey because you love Ivan. Ivan's your protagonist. You need to see what Ivan experienced. But I think what makes this film different than a lot of immigrant narratives is that he became very successful. He could have stayed. He was a lower middle class Mexican with an okay job. He had ambition and ego. And I love that about the character because we're never allowed to see that.
We as Americans could go live in France just because we would be more fulfilled perhaps to be there and be part of the tradition of Hemingway and whatever dream we have about something. We have that freedom, absolutely. So why wouldn't, you be able to be a young Mexican and come to New York City where you can fulfill your dreams? And New York City especially is a place where people come to for that kind of outcome.
I really wanted to show dimension to the immigrant story because I don't think we don't see that enough.
Right.
And it also is a true story, and it's part of the reason I wanted to tell the story was like there's some attitude there with the characters.
Yeah, like real life is messier. It doesn't fit in genres. It's not one particular story. It's multiple stories at the same time.
That's right. And I think audiences really appreciate nuance these days. I really do. I mean, audiences are so much more sophisticated than they're often given credit for. I mean, I think television has gotten much smarter in the last 10 years.
Part of it is having the real estate of a series, right? That gives you a lot more space to do that. So speaking of, Love Fraud just sort of had a secret debut tonight, right as we got here. And it's already had how many thousands of
like
viewers?
150,000.
Right.
I mean, that was just like it's fun. It's coming on Showtime in a second. And we'd never done a series. Rachel and I co-directed it. We never wanted to do a series. I really enjoy the 3-act
And you've never
format.
been in a series yourself, right?
Yeah, we're not really in it. Our voice is in it, okay? You don't ever see us. You just hear us on the phone. We had to be really transparent because we joined this group of women that were looking for a con artist who had deceived them. And we decided to help them find him. So actually what happens in Love Fraud is just what happens when women are wronged. They come together very often. It's why women should be like running every country in the world. Like all the countries who did best at COVID were run by women.
Yeah.
I think that we have incredible leadership and we have, so for me, it's really interesting to read the reviews because everyone's like, oh, it's so refreshing to see women come together. And like as if it's like we found the only group of women on the planet that wouldn't fight.
Heidi Ewing and Rachel Grady's 4-part documentary series, Love Fraud, premiered on Showtime on August 30th. Heidi Ewing's solo feature film, I Carry You With Me, won both the Sundance Film Festival's Audience Award and the Next Innovator Award. The film will screen at the New York Film Festival on October 2nd and is scheduled for release in January 2021. The following conversation with Chris Martin took place in Bovina, New York on September 9th, 2020.
Chris Martin is a painter whose work draws from such wide-ranging sources as abstract expressionism, African art, and the Catskill Mountains. Incorporating glitter, record albums, and other non-conventional materials, his incandescent paintings erupt with pleasure and also allude to dark times. You've been around for a while. I know you've been painting for a while, but it seems that fairly recently you've been more in the spotlight. But were you doing other kinds of things?
I was painting the whole time. Around the end of the 80s, the art world kind of crashed for me, and I ended up working pretty full-time for almost 20 years as an art therapist and a case manager for men and women living with AIDS and drug addiction, mental illness.
It's almost a cliche of painting in particular, the idea that art is therapeutic. I remember after 9/11 and people talking about people going into museums for solace, and I thought that was so trivializing for art. But in a way, I think that your work in particular, your approach to it is therapeutic, not just for you doing it, I guess, or I might presume, but for anyone looking at it in a way. It's very seductive and very happy.
Well, I hope that's true. Certainly during the time I was working at those jobs, my art was an important kind of therapy for me. And I think a lot of us were processing, it was a different pandemic, the AIDS pandemic. So there was a lot of kind of grief and very strong emotions, and I ended up making very somber, large, abstract paintings, which I see now, it's kind of obvious that they were kind of about grief and kind of quietness and being able to heal in some way. But one of my earliest influences, the reason I even heard the word art therapy, was Joseph Beuys. So I was always interested in his work.
I'm not that familiar with what he did in relation to art therapy. I mean, his performances...
Well, his idea was that art was also a kind of shamanic, therapeutic healing. Right. It could be a cathartic experience. And I would be very happy if that my art could be that for other people.
So what did you do with people in therapy? Was there glitter involved?
There was. And actually, the reason I used glitter was because I had these supplies for art. This was at a day treatment program in Red Hook, Brooklyn. And we had glitter and we had gold paint and silver paint. But they love it. And fairly quickly, I realized I really loved it too. So that's why how I discovered glitter, was working as an art therapist.
I can see the glitter maybe in art historically, like the sort of like gold leaf in religious paintings or something like that. But I mean, what did it mean to them, do you think, using?
I think that for the same reason that the gold paint used to be the first thing that ran out, people want something that is shiny, has sort of value, reflects.
Yeah.
And I think also for me, it's very much about kind of a Vegas, sort of gay, tawdry kind of glitter, Mardi Gras.
The counterweight to that sort of sadness of that is a part of gay culture, I think, for so long going back.
And I think that the art world, with a material like that, there's this immediate suspicion that glitter is kind of a cheap joy somehow.
Yeah.
And I was very quickly persuaded, working with people, that it was actually great.
The sensibility of the art world and painting in particular has kind of caught up with you recently, because I know a lot of younger artists who seem to really embrace spontaneity, authenticity is a big value, strong color.
My training and ambition as a young artist was to be really serious. I wanted to be so serious about painting.
Of course.
And in life, I think I was a much more funny guy with a sense of humor. And people used to say, well, it's not in your painting.
Does the person have to match the art?
Well, it took me a while to open up to the things that were bad. The whole Greenberg, serious Soho thing, no one thought about European art. You know, Fontana was just bad.
Yeah.
All this stuff was considered, like Niki de Saint-Phal was, you know. And I think for me, I really grew up with the great modernist painting, and so I was more open to people like Polka.
I remember a time maybe 20 years ago when having your work or your writing called beautiful was like one of the worst insults you could have heard.
Yes, that's a really important point too, because America, especially the kind of intellectual, serious art world, they're suspicious of color, they're suspicious of joy, they're suspicious of a lot of things that are not intellectually defensible. And so pleasure was something that was very suspicious. So if you said, well, that's a very beautiful thing to look at, that was a strike against it.
Going back to the beauty question, I think Kandinsky is like a big reference for so much of it, because here was somebody in the early period of modernism who thought about like what red means and to the psyche, what a bouncing mountain meant to the heart. I mean, these are cliches of you know, sensory response to painting. In some ways, maybe it seems like hokey color theory or those sorts of things, but it actually, color does have, Sarah Brayman said one time, she just believes in color. Like, you have to believe in color. And it sounds very basic, it sounds almost mystical or religious, but I think that if that's the kind of idea that's in the painting itself, then that would be the right approach to take to it.
Well, Sarah's a really good artist, and you can tell she believes in color.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I hear you almost apologizing for something being mystical, and that's the classic American kind of puritanical, intellectual. It's pleasurable, and so we're a little bit embarrassed about that because we want to be serious. I feel that the task with any art form is to be as present as possible. I'm 65 years old. I've been making paintings for 50 years, you know, considering myself an artist.
Mm-hmm.
So on one level, obviously, I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing.
Mm.
But the moments of discovery happen when I really don't know for a moment. Or if I'm lucky, I don't know for a whole afternoon.
Yeah, it would be super boring to be like Mondrian and just paint variations
Oh,
of
no,
the
Mondrian was not bored. He was a dancing genius. Mondrian is actually the first action painter. The paintings are made by hand and they're adjusted constantly. It's just that adjustment is happening on, you know, 1/16 of an inch.
Micro.
And then the whole neoplastic theory that surrounds it makes people think that he was illustrating theory, but in fact, the theory always came second. You know, Mondrian was the guy that discovered Pollock. Peggy Guggenheim, and he and Duchamp and Mondrian's going, no, I think these are the best things I've seen in America.
They were inventing kind of the language of modernism, and they were making paintings at a time when there were still sort of horses on the street, and we didn't have at that point blocky monochrome buildings and all of the things that we've come to become familiar with in terms of modernism, that vocabulary just in everyday life.
I think also Mondrian and that group, they actually thought they were going to change society. That
right.
If people learned how to balance the formal aspects of their living room or their kitchen, that they would find a new freedom and a new society. So there's this wonderful turn of the century optimism.
I don't think documentary photographers even feel that way necessarily now, which is strange. I mean, the power of art to change the social moment or political moment.
You know, it was interesting for me when I was working very much on the front lines of AIDS and very close to the politics and trying to change the social situation, and we were marching. I was very aware at the time that my own work was about keeping me personally sane, and that if I wanted to change the society, the best way to really work on changing society was not to make paintings, but to work in the society. And at the same time, I was born to make paintings somehow. This is my great love and interest. So I do feel that art is potentially really tremendously powerful.
Even in the moment, just the creativity of the signs in the protests. I mean, there's a lot of effort going into that.
I love that stuff. It's great. And all these paintings that were done on the boarded up plywood windows downtown, some of them are terrific. And I should say that one of the things that really influenced me as an artist in New York City all these years, I hate the word graffiti, but all this painting that was happening on the street was really terrific.
There's such a fusion of art and activism now. I mean, it seemed as if there's no choice after, you know, the current president was elected. Everybody, no matter what you did in life, suddenly had some political potential, or it was unavoidable, let's say. Has your color palette, has your choice of subject matter, has any of that changed in the last 3 or 4 years that you've noticed?
I think what has happened is that for all of us, we're very aware now of the political implications of forms and collage that maybe weren't so obvious before. And in the same token, I think if I feel called to really do my part in the politicals, you know, I'm better off marching in a parade or donating money. My daughter's last election, they were all making phone calls and being bused to Cleveland to get people out to vote in the 60s, to sort of be aware of the whole kind of Nixon anti-war thing. And it was the same America. It was hard hats beating up people with long hair.
Right.
The moral majority. All this stuff. So in some ways, America has always been a violent, kind of brutish, really racist society. I mean, America is founded on basically two genocides. First, the genocide of the Native American peoples, and then the unimaginable genocide of slavery. Those are the two bedrock things that made America.
And this anti-intellectualism that happens here widely is so, academia, what we do is so separate from mainstream, but it's still enforced, this anti-intellectualism, which would never really let anybody develop enough culturally, psychologically as a culture to understand these conditions. I mean, there are people out there now who are flatly denying that racism exists in this country. And
there was a show at the Gray Art Gallery a few years ago of the 8th Street scene in the late 40s, early 50s. And at that moment, they had just set off the hydrogen bomb. And all these young artists were thinking, this is the end of the world. The world could end any moment. There was the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so people were really confronted with the idea that we're in New York and, tomorrow it could be smoking rubble. And how did they react? How did they continue to make art? How did that affect their art? And so we're in a similar situation where you're thinking, is it too late?
It sure feels different than any other time when I felt discouraged by
It
politics.
feels different.
Yeah.
It's always...
just the multiple fronts, fascism, the environment, the pandemic.
It's dark times in America.
Chris Martin's online exhibition, titled Made in the Catskills, opened at Anton Kern Gallery on September 14th, and 3 of his paintings are currently on view in the gallery's window space on Walker Street in Manhattan.